ladies and gentlemen, now hosting the RizzoCast. Put your hands together for Steven Risotto.
What's going on, everybody? And welcome. My name is Steven Risotto. I used to cover the San Francisco Giants for SF and I'm currently a producer for 95.7 The Game. That's why there has not been an episode. I just recently got the position, so I've been busy with that. But I'm going to try to make a RizzoCast as much as possible. That's not going away. And I'm also the host of RizzoCast, the podcast that features current and former big league players, coaches, fans, media, and others who are also regarded as some of the brightest minds around the game of baseball. Today's guest is Joe Trujillo, a certified athletic trainer and former minor league trainer for the Oakland Athletics organization. Joe graduated from Grand Canyon University in 2015 with a bachelor's in the science of athletic training and later found gigs at the high school and college level while also having a brief stint as a pitching instructor. Pretty interesting story there. In 2022, he was hired by the Oakland A's and served as the minor league trainer for the player development complex in the organization's Dominican Republic Academy. So we discussed getting introduced to sports medicine, coaching high school baseball, becoming an athletic trainer with the A's, spending a year in the Dominican Republic, working for a professional organization, learning Spanish, communicating with players, playing the bad cop when he might need to, identifying injuries, so much more. This is episode number 174 of RizzoCast. Let's get started. What is going on, everybody? We are back on RizzoCast, and we are pleased to be joined by Joe Trujillo. And Joe is nice enough to take some time out of his day, his busy day, and join the show. Joe, what's going on? How you doing? Welcome.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me on, Steven. It's great to be here. Anytime I get the opportunity to kind of shed some light on the world of sports medicine and athletic training, I try to do it. And I was just thankful that you agreed to let some guy like me onto a podcast to talk.
Absolutely. Hey, there have been less qualified on this podcast before, I can assure you. I want to start off because you mentioned before we got on, and the listeners won't see this, but the people watching would. You have baseball memorabilia in the back, and this is just off the top of the dome, Joe. So what is back there? What kind of baseball memorabilia do you have? Tell me a little bit about it.
Oh yeah, so I grew up in Denver, Colorado, as a Colorado Rockies fan, and I'm actually older than the franchise, so it was kind of nice to grow up with the Rockies, and my favorite player is Todd Helton, so I struck gold by trying to hunt his autographs down for years, but I grew up just on the north side of Lodo, so I was able to kind of go in to watch Coors Field games for my whole entire like childhood. And it was nice to get into the stadium, into the rock pile for like $4 a ticket at that point. So we were able to just kind of get into the stadium and sneak past any of the security guards down in home run territory and kind of acquire some baseballs that way. So up there, I have a whole bunch of autographs that I've acquired through the years. Some autographs on some baseballs that I got with my time working with the A's a few years ago. Some guys that are making their major league debut this year. I think one of them just made second team All MLB this year and probably going to win the reliever of the year. And then just some stuff from my old playing days and a couple of golf balls. I got my hole-in-one golf ball up there. So just all kinds of stuff in my man cave that my wife lets me keep around.
Definitely. Yeah, no, definitely gotta please the wife and keep all of that out of her hair. I want to start. It's definitely a pleasure to have you on, Joe. I mean, we connected back in February, but I'm just now getting a chance to kind of reach back out and record and set something up. And you mentioned to me that you have a child at home. Tell me how that experience has been, kind of being a dad and kind of settling in, because it seems like it's something that is obviously a big part of your life. But tell me a little bit about how that's been and everything, and connecting with her.
Oh man, yeah, such a blessing. It's definitely a life changer. But being a dad is like the coolest thing that can ever happen, I think, to anybody out there. It really humbles you. It kind of puts things into perspective quite a bit and chills you out. But yeah, we had a pretty normal pregnancy. I would say probably even a great pregnancy. My wife didn't have like crazy cravings or anything. I wasn't up at like 3 in the morning, like making tapioca pudding or anything. So, we were all expecting a normal birth if there ever is one, and things kind of rapidly changed early on after my daughter was born. She kind of plummeted and ran into some really serious health issues. So from the delivery room straight to the NICU at the hospital she was born at, and then a flight for life to Phoenix Children's Hospital, and we were there for the next like 38 days, kind of making sure that my daughter was safe enough to come home with us, which was obviously a little stressful, and we're still dealing with a lot of things. It keeps us pretty occupied. She's the baby's the center of the world as it is, but she's even more the center of our world because we have so many specialists coming into our house to see her, and then taking her to doctor's appointments as well. But she's just a thriving little girl. We're learning how to eat, and so it's great to see the progress. I look back at all the photos that we took. I only have, I think, 2,000 of them in 4 months that she's been born, but you look back and you're like, man, she was just a little tiny peanut. And as she grows, and you're like, man, she's not that little infant anymore, and now she's kind of got her own attitude, her own emotions, her own facial expressions, and I mean, it's so cool to just see a little life develop, especially when it's staring back at you and it kind of looks like you. So I wouldn't change anything for the world.
Yeah, no, 2,000, that's it. I mean, you're slacking. You gotta get up there a
I'm
little
running out of
more.
space, man. Google really harps down on like, hey, you're 98% full, so I got to go and take some off of my Google Drive and throw them into an actual like hard drive, and make some backups on a separate like Google account, so that way I don't have to pay for that yearly 1 terabyte storage. Although eventually we'll end up doing it, I'm sure.
Yeah. And just take out all the duplicates, right? That's what I
Oh,
do.
there's
Whenever
so
I
many of
have too
them.
much, the duplicates, it's like 12 of the same picture. I'm like,
Same
okay, this is
photo.
an easy clean.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, it's been great. I kind of wasn't sure what life was going to look like for me after I got done working with the Oakland Athletics when I got back from the Dominican Republic, and they decided to go a different direction and not renew my contract. Um, which was a little kind of punch in the gut, but you bounce back, especially in sports medicine. There's always another job opportunity, and a couple weeks later, I found out we were going to have a little kid, and so given everything that it kind of had to go through, it was good that I wasn't in the middle of a baseball season because she was born in the middle of summer, and have to kind of balance being a pro baseball athletic trainer versus being a supporting husband and a new dad. So God works in mysterious ways, and I think that all kind of trickled into exactly where I needed to be.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The timing couldn't have been better. And I
For
want to
sure.
follow up because you mentioned that with some of the health things that your daughter was going through, and there's specialists coming in and out, and you spent a lot of time in medical centers and hospitals. As an athletic trainer, I know the two really maybe correlate a little bit, maybe not. It's very different, obviously, different type of medicine and medical information. But was there any point of view with your profession that like felt like I kind of speak this language, like with some of the health stuff that was going on, or at least I could kind of like understand what's going on better if I didn't have the sports medicine background? Did that ever come into play with it?
At times, my wife she's a nurse. She's been a nurse
Okay, so she's
for
got you
like
covered.
9 years, yeah, and she was at bedside, and for her first 3 years of practice, and she's kind of worked her way up the hospital system, and now she's like a clinical nurse educator. And so like I have to give like 100% of the credit, because as soon as things started going downhill with my daughter out of the delivery room, I started crying like the biggest baby in the world, and I couldn't, tell you what 1 plus 1 was, and keep the ducks in a row. And my wife went straight into nurse mode and started asking questions that I wouldn't have thought. And she kind of did that through the whole process of our NICU stay and becoming NICU parents. But as I calmed down after, kind of the initial traumatic part of it had died down, yeah, you do learn the language pretty quick. And there is some things, when you start talking like, yeah, she normally takes 20 milliliters PO Q 3 hours. the nurses and practitioners that would come in and see her, like, what form of healthcare are you in? And so that always opens up the conversation of, oh, I'm an athletic trainer. And they're like, oh, and you either go like one of two ways. It's like, oh, you work in sports medicine, you're on the sideline of like high school football games, or oh, you're a personal trainer, which gym do you work in? And as you were telling me before we started recording, your brother is an athletic trainer in California, and I'm like, oh, does he get the same misnomer or confusion from the general public? So it's one of the reasons and driving forces of why I like to jump on podcasts like this, is to shed some light on kind of the differences and what the role of an athletic trainer is. So yeah, it was good. I definitely learned more of the nomenclature of like general medicine and like emergency medicine in the NICU. So it didn't hurt having a little bit of background, but my wife was definitely the enforcer and the decision maker when we were triaging kind of how things were supposed to go.
Definitely. So it's definitely a medical infused household, very medical based household.
Very
So
diverse. And
yeah.
my sister-in-law is a doctor of occupational therapy for the VA, so we just have kind of hitting all these different spots.
Yeah,
Yeah.
covering it all, I guess. Let's get into your career a little bit. I mentioned this to you before. I've never had an athletic trainer on the podcast before. I try to cover it all and every angles of baseball here and sports, I guess, in general, but for whatever reason, I haven't come across to having. I've had a personal trainer on, which again, as we know, is different. Um,
Yep.
but
Yeah.
so you're the first athletic trainer. Tell me a little bit about the decision to get into sports media as a profession, and why was that kind of an appealing career avenue for you?
Oh yeah, much like every other athletic trainer that you'll meet, especially in like the professional baseball realm, we were all hopeless, baseball players when we were either in high school or in college for some of us, and we realized pretty early on that we weren't going to be able to take it to the next level. The thing that's unique about what athletic trainers do is kind of our setting in medicine, and like we're in the dugout, we're in the clubhouse, we are, in the team hotel with the players, we're traveling with the players on the bus, if you're in the minor leagues, or, by airplane if you're kind of up in AAA or with the major league squad. And so you get to know the players a little bit different. But yeah, just like everyone else, I was a quarterback in high school and played some baseball. Got into college using a little bit of that talent, and very quickly found out that I wasn't going to be able to compete at that level. And I was already committed to going to a school, Grand Canyon University in Arizona. My mom had passed away like 2 weeks after I graduated high school, so it kind of untethered me from needing to be home or being around. I was such a mama's boy, that kind of her passing kind of let me branch out to go to Arizona, and go to GCU. And we would kind of go back to like God works in mysterious ways. I met my wife there my freshman year. We started dating, and we've been married now, or together now, for 13 years, and married for 6. And we have our beautiful little girl and our whole house. And on the sports medicine side of stuff, I got my degree there, and I figured, well, half of Major League Baseball has their spring training facilities here in Arizona, and it would be great for networking if I wanted to ultimately get back into professional baseball, that way, or to break into professional baseball, I should say. So yeah, it was, I wanted to be around. I still enjoy the competitive nature of sport, and I, even though I can't be on the mound out there with those guys doing it at the professional level, I can certainly play a small role at times in keeping them out there, and making sure that they stay out there and helping other other athletes achieve that ultimate dream of getting called up to the big leagues, and that was just such a rewarding feeling. How could I not want to kind of be around that type of setting?
Mhm. And I guess what is the order of operation for that? Because you mentioned that obviously you come from a sports background first, and then the medicine maybe came after. But like, what for someone to be an effective athletic trainer, do they have to like, or do they have to love sports first, or do they have to love sports medicine first? I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, that's a great question. For me, I went into my senior year of high school, and I would never have thought that I was going to be doing what I'm doing today. But the first play of like the summer scrimmage of my senior year, I broke my ankle. Ended up getting some plates put in there and some screws. And so I spent a lot of time with the athletic trainer at my high school. And I found, like, come to find out, this guy's just kind of been at the school as a resource for all of the athletes there. And it basically is the closest thing you're going to get to free healthcare in the United States at the moment. I mean, you go in there and you can get rehab programs done. You can get some treatment, some hands-on stuff. They advise you on things you can do. They're kind of a Swiss Army knife when it comes to being a resource at the high school setting, versus if I would have had to go to physical therapy, I would have had to have gotten a prescription for it from my surgeon. And that copay could have cost us $150 a month, or $150 a visit, $10 a visit, money out of my pocket and time out of my mother's day to drive me to there and bring me back home. So the athletic trainer I really developed a relationship with them because I thought it was really neat what they were doing, and also them being on the sidelines with us or in the dugout with us was pretty cool. So as you get to talking to them about kind of how they got to do that, you fall more in love with the idea of, if I can't become a professional athlete, I could still maybe be around athletics. So for me personally, I was dead focused on, I'm going to be the next, John Elway. I'm going to be the next Todd Helton. And then if you find out real quick that there's only one of those type of people out there, and you're not the next one. So I think it helps in the profession as I've started my 10th year of practice now. Not everybody had a big sports background. Like, there's just some athletic trainers that really love helping people, and this is the setting that they want to work in because it's not in the office setting. It's not a traditional setting. It's very fast paced and changing rapidly, with the travel and kind of the hours that you work and the people that you see. But I think it does help understanding the sport that you're working with. And it makes so that the season doesn't go on as long, I would say. If you don't understand the sport that you're covering and you're in for, an 8 month long season, it could kind of get into the dog days of the summer in baseball, and you kind of get a little bit of burnout. And I see that a little bit in the athletic training profession as well with my former classmates and people that I've networked with over the years.
Very interesting. And I was kind of going through your career trajectory, and I saw that you hopped around, you did some physical therapy work, you've worked at colleges, FC Arizona, the soccer team. But one stop that kind of caught my attention was that you were hired on as the assistant varsity baseball coach and director of pitching development at a school in Gilbert, Arizona. And I know this was kind of all overlapping
Oh, yeah.
with your sports medicine career, but how did that kind of whole situation play out with, having sports medicine on one side and then kind of getting into coaching on the other side?
Yeah, it is an interesting path. I don't think a lot of ATs that I know have kind of gone that way. So I was a pitcher in high school, and so I still had a love for that. And the school that you're talking about, it's Arate Preparatory Academy. So shout out to my Charger
Shout out.
family. I just got my Athletic Hall of Fame like brick put in over that school this year.
What? So
So
you're a Hall of
super,
Famer, Joe.
yeah, super cool. Yeah. So that's awesome. So shout out to all the staff over there and people I still talk to, pretty regularly. Yeah, I just kind of was watching baseball practice one day as an athletic trainer does, and get to talking with some of the coaching staff around there, and kind of talking through, pitching development, access, tunneling, all of this stuff that they had considered, kind of specialized in baseball. And they wanted me to get kind of more involved with like developing their arm care program and keeping the players on the field. And somewhere along the lines, I kind of flip-flopped and became more of a stay with the baseball program and still did stuff at the high school for the sports medicine side. And then even there, I don't even think it's on my profile. I started the first sports medicine curriculum there at that school. And so I was teaching a extracurricular club. I was doing the treatment stuff after school, and then also kind of running away to go to baseball practice there and to baseball games. So I was wearing a couple of different hats at the same time. And I don't really know kind of how it fell into place that way, but it was sure fun while I was doing it.
I'm gonna have to connect you with my brother because he always, whenever I go and watch one of the games, he always has like little helpers and students following him around and shadowing him, and it's kind of an interesting thing. So we'll
Oh,
definitely have
there's
to.
so many. Yeah, the
Yeah.
young kids, it's great to, especially at the high school level, which is where I'm at again. I have my little minions, and I'm like, hey, if you have any interest in working in sports medicine or athletic training, like come shadow me. 90% of it's because I want to give kids like the chance to see what an athletic trainer is so that they don't mistake it for being a personal trainer, invest all that money and time into an education, and then have it not be what they want it to be. 10% of it is could really use the help throwing out some water jugs and filling up some water during a high school football game. And it's all kind of part of that. But after coming from pro baseball, it's kind of an easy sell for the kids. Say, hey, you want to come get some shadowing experience with the former, pro baseball athletic trainer and kind of hear how the ropes were up there and kind of my journey in between all the different settings I've been in. And I just had, a overflow of interest from the school that I'm at currently. And so it was makes for a nice thing. I'm sure your brother can appreciate the extra help that they get, on the sidelines during a during a
I
game.
should have had him do this with me. I should have had him do this with me.
Oh, anytime. You know how to get a hold of me, so I would love to chat with him. We could run back another episode and maybe do it again too.
Yeah, we'll come back again for sure.
Yeah.
So you worked some other sports, of course. You just mentioned high school football. I mentioned soccer, probably a bunch of other sports. But from an athletic training perspective, how does baseball differ from the rest?
Oh, yeah. So soccer was like really big on like GPS tracking, like they're like cardio during practices and stuff. So at times you were more like the techie. And obviously you're still, taping ankles and you're still triaging injuries and working with our team doctor and stuff. But it was a lot less hands-on, I found at that professional level. Like our doctors kind of took over and the physical therapist team that I was working with really wanted to get guys in during, off time to get them dry needled or whatever the case and get their programs done. So I really covered a lot of practices in the game time and the immediate care of injuries. Baseball, and at the levels that I was at, I started off in rookie ball as an intern with the Oakland A's in 2022. And there was, six other athletic trainers that were working inside of the Arizona Complex League with me that I got to one shadow from. You kind of be a fly on the wall in all the conversations because there was a lot of knowledge and a lot of tenure in that clubhouse, in that training facility, with everybody that was there. So you kind of learn from some of the best to ever do it. Some former PBATS athletic trainers of the year that I worked with, that I'm still in contact with today, and people I consider, good resources for me and smart providers, to be in the game for as long as they've been in the game. Um, and then I went down to the Dominican Republic where I was a one-man circus basically for the majority of the year until they hired on my assistant who came down for 5 months. And there, your resources are kind of stretched as thin as you can get. So it really forces you to think outside of the box. So I was, you know, doing pre-practice treatment, going to pre-game batting practice, triaging injuries if they happen during the game, watching the game, then doing post-game treatment, typing it all up into a nice injury report and sending it out to our other affiliates and to the medical coordinator. But then I lived on the complex with the players. So if a kid got a stomach ache at 3 in the morning, I'd get a knock at my door asking for some medicine or some help. And so you kind of have to be, a nurse, overnight nurse, things like that. And you got to be cordial with the kids because they see you as an authority figure, but also like a healthcare provider. And so, I would go and sometimes you get an early night and you could play video games with the kids out in the break room or, just kind of get to mingle and know them. Because for as hard as it was for me to be away from my wife and my dog for the 10 months I was, these kids are 17, 18, 19-year olds, professional baseball players that are coming from all over Latin America and living away from their family. And I was lucky enough that my wife was able to come visit me for time to time, and they don't get to see their family for basically the whole year. So you put your hat on, as kind of an emotional support as well.
Yeah, no, that's a crazy situation. Just thinking about being away from family at that age is just a really intense thing. And when they get to the big leagues, like you could tell they're mature beyond their years a lot of the times.
Oh
So
yeah, a lot of them have been out of their house since they were, late teen, and they kind of get the rigmarole of here's kind of like what my work schedule's like. I'm gonna bust my butt to try and make a living, and those that get called up to the big leagues are, just absolutely wonderful, and it's great to see stories like that. Whenever I see a Latin-based kid get called up, I'm always like, yeah, it's nice to see them because I know after living in a country like the Dominican Republic for 10 months, kind of where some of these players come from and what the stark difference is of not only the money that they make, which is life changing, but the amenities that they have and how they can use that money to take care of their families back home.
No, no, for sure. And I was just about to bring up the Dominican Republic, and your stint there, and it's almost like you've gotten to see baseball now in like two different countries, right? America and the Dominican Republic, and these are not only just two countries; they're two countries that happen to be the main countries in really dominating baseball. I mean, I guess next stop is Japan, maybe, for you, but maybe that's down the line when your daughter's older and everything.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
actually I visited Japan right before I went down to the Dominican Republic. I came back to the United States for like 20 hours, did some laundry, and then I went down to the DR. And I would love to go to Japan. I think I could also get my wife on board with that since she was the one that wanted to go visit Japan. So yeah, I wouldn't mind working in Japan in professional baseball at all.
Yeah, no, it seems like a cool gig, and it would make you officially. I think you're well traveled now, but it would make you officially even more well traveled. We're going to take a break on RizzoCast, but first, here's a quick word from our sponsor.
Hey, RizzoCast listeners, how you enjoying the show so far? If you are enjoying the content and want more RizzoCast, please make sure to subscribe and leave a review on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. We're also on social media, so follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at RizzoCast. Now let's get back to the show.
Um,
Oh yeah.
but yeah, Dominican Republic and United States, kind of two of the dominating forces in baseball right now. Did you learn anything? Like you mentioned that you learned kind of the how the resources down there. What else did you learn when you were over there?
So I learned Spanish when I was over there. When I went down there, I didn't know any Spanish.
Wow.
And
Okay.
some of the athletic training staff and the other support staff in Arizona were kind of making fun of me
I was
because
actually going to say, because in order to do this, like maybe like being bilingual helps. Like that's a major, like that would be a major
100%.
part of it.
Yeah, yeah. And so like I was printing off stacks of paper in the work office at Fitch Park in Arizona of like 140 most common like Spanish terms, and JD Howell I think I think he just got called up to the majors to work as a strength and conditioning coach. Excellent guy. He was like, yeah, bite sizes, Joe, bite sizes. You'll learn it out there. You'll learn. And so I laugh at myself because I was so intimidated at going to a Spanish speaking country, and you really do learn it pretty quickly because it's all you hear constantly day in and day out. And at first it's radio static, and you kind of pick out some words here and there. And as the months went on, you there was less radio static, and I um, got quite a big chunk of Spanish under my belt now, and that obviously helps like the resume for future opportunities. So I learned that, yeah, in the Dominican Republic, Spanish. I learned that it's a different kind of Spanish than people that come from Mexico, living in Arizona. I come across some families that I work with at the high school that are Spanish speaking only parents. So I'm able to communicate with them, even though some of the dialect is a little bit different, it still is a valuable tool in my pocket to, properly communicate kind of what our options are when a kid gets hurt. Um, I also learned to appreciate all the stuff that I have. I would go into the small towns that are around kind of Santo Domingo, which is where our baseball academy was at, and you see people that own bodegas but live in the back of them with no flooring, and they might have one light piece of electricity that runs the bodega during the day, and then at night with no doors and windows that are have no insulation, so they're really exposed to the humid elements and stuff. And I've never met more happy working people and just happy people in general with so little from growing up in the United States. when I came back here to the US, I was like, man, I really changed my perspective on how to be thankful for like everything that I have in my life and all the spoils that we have and take for granted, roads and that have gravel, cars and traffic signs and signals and all that. It was very eye-opening. And I made some great relationships with the support staff that are out there. One of my local assistants that helped me, his name's Mario Klime. He's like 78 years old. He's been working with the Oakland A's down there since he was he's been, I think 39 years now, or whenever they first started, I think their second year being down in the Dominican with their academy, he started working for him. And he's like a wealth of knowledge and just the old timer that, can kind of tell you the whole history of the Dominican Republic. So it was great to get to mingle and make lifelong friends. Mario still calls me or FaceTimes me every week or two. Just to check in and see how my daughter's doing. So it means a lot.
That's really awesome. That's really cool that there's, you know, people like that you worked with that could still come in contact with you for sure. And
Mhm.
I am like, I mean, that's really brave of you to take a job in the Dominican Republic without knowing Spanish. And kudos to you for learning it when you were down there, because I'm on Duolingo and I'm finding the process to be very, very slow, Joe. So
Yeah,
we'll get
yeah.
there.
I
Maybe I
mean,
just got to
I
move to a Spanish speaking country.
That's it. Yeah, just go drop yourself right in the thick of it for a couple of months and you'll be fine, especially if you had Duolingo and you already have more than I knew going in. And really that whole conversation started. As I told you, I was an intern with the A's. And so you're really, when you're trying to break into professional sports, you find your fifth gear. And then once you break in, a lot of people would think that you just need to stay at that fifth level. And for me, I was like, I need to find gear number six, number seven to give them a reason to want to keep me around, because it's a year-long contract, and once the year's over, there's no guarantee that you're going to be asked back. And so, in instructional league, the medical coordinator and the other Latin American medical coordinator had kind of brought me into the office and said, here's kind of what our staff is looking like for next year. We know that you have a family here, and it's going to take some convincing. How would you be would you be open to the opportunity of working down in the Dominican Republic for us? We want to keep you on board. We'd bring you on as a full timer, and this is kind of what the year would look like for you down there. And so I had to, it was a lot of long dog walks with my wife, and kind of going over like, here's the benefit of it, and here's how we can make this work as a family. And so yeah, shout out to the medical coordinators there with the A's to allot me the time to make me feel like I was going to be a good supporting staff member down in that role, and it was life changing. I'll always be thankful for them kind of taking a chance at bringing me in as a full timer and testing me down there.
So for all of the trainers at the minor league level, is it just a year-to-year contract? Is that how it is with all of them? Or obviously,
Uh,
like I know you can't speak on every organization and every sport,
Yeah,
but
as far as I know, within the Oakland A's organization, and I think most other organizations too, from just me talking with other athletic trainers, most minor league ATs will work on a 1 year contract. Typically, it's from November 1st till Halloween. So you'll see a lot of job postings, kind of in early October, and people changing their job title on LinkedIn or around November because of it. Um, but I think they're like the medical coordinators. I think some organizations do it differently. They may sign a multiple year contract just because it takes a little while for them to kind of get the staff they want in necessarily to work around and to change whatever things they want to change on a affiliate level as far as arm care goes and stuff. But yeah, there's plenty of greater heads that could answer that question. But yeah, for us, it was a year-to-year contract, and you really want to try and impress and give them a reason to keep you around.
yeah, for sure. And I do want to ask about like the aspect of being a part of an organization, right? And how is the communication? You mentioned earlier something about filling out injury reports and sending up through the affiliates and the coordinators. How is the communication like with the A's organization? And what I mean by that is like, is there any specific programs or treatment plans that you had to introduce that's coming from them? Did you have full reins? You mentioned the reports. You could touch on that too, but what were some of the communication communication aspects that you had with the A's organization?
Yeah, communication, I think for any young athletic trainers that'll watch this or anybody that's kind of interested, just a general like big rule of thumb or some advice that I can give um, is be good at communicating. In professional sports, communication kind of runs through a lot of different channels every day. Every day I was sending multiple text messages and emails off to my Latin American coordinator, who would then talk to the minor league medical coordinator, the rookie ball affiliate training staff, because if a guy's getting promoted up, we kind of want to know if he's working through an injury right now, he's kind of looking like his legs are not under him, something, or they're going in perfectly healthy with no reported problems. That way we know what to expect when we get them up to the United States from the Dominican Republic. And you're sending off your injury reports to everybody within the organization as far as, player development goes. So your coaching staff and all of the other athletic trainers and even your major league staff will get it. And so, it's always a real streamlined communication. Now, as far as having free reign, another piece of advice, if I could offer it to your listeners, is if you can get an internship working in any professional sport, go in there, but go in there with a completely open mind that you know nothing, because you're going to want to adapt and be malleable to the organizational view on how they manage arm care programs, rehab programs, how they communicate and integrate other professions into the care plan. A lot of organizations will use only athletic trainers for long-term rehab. A lot of organizations will use athletic trainers and physical therapists and mental health specialists. And it just everyone's so different the way that they do it, that you don't want to go in with a preconceived notion of there's only my way to do this. If you do it, you're probably not going to get the most out of your internship and your time, and you probably won't move up through the rankings there. So it is a lot of absorbing what they want to do on a philosophical level. And when you kind of think about it, I was down in the Dominican Republic with kids that were young, and they're striving as hard as they can do, as hard as they can to get to the United States and get to rookie ball here and move their way up. I need to speak the same language in the training room with them that they're going to see in the training room in the United States, because it's going to be the one thing that's familiar to them when they get to the US. And as hard as it was for me to go from being an American or an English speaker only to the Dominican Republic, they're going to go and again leave. Maybe they're from the Dominican Republic and they have the opportunity to go to see their family on an occasional weekend. Now they're going to be in a whole different country, and they're not going to have the same signs that kind of convert. So they're gonna need to know where they can find their arm care program. Who do they need to go talk to if something's bothering their shoulder? And so when you're down in the Dominican Republic, you have a vital role in like setting that precedent. Like, hey, when you're hurting, it's okay to come talk to somebody that looks like me. Here's what's on the board. I know that it's in English, but these things, like, learn these words in English, and when you get to the United States, you'll be a step ahead of people, and it'll be some comfortability for you, because it's going to be a stressful time, and you're still going to have to go 100% if you get called up in the middle of the season. So nobody's going to baby you, and so if you can provide that as an athletic trainer, that comfortability and familiarity with them, it's vital.
Mhm. And just to kind of follow up on that, well, I guess maybe a different topic, but same kind of vibe a little bit. Do you ever feel like, and you're probably gonna laugh, do you ever feel like the bad guy as a trainer? And I mean, I mean, think about it. Like, if you're always seemingly the one that delivers the bad news, like, does that image of being the bad guy like creep into your mind? Not just with the players, like, telling a player that he can't play is one thing, but you also have the parents and you have the coaches who probably have like, oh, this guy again, keeping someone out, that type of thing. Do you ever like feel like the bad guy? And if you do, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, the nice thing is at the professional level and the lower levels that I was at, you don't deal with parents.
No.
I know as you kind of progress up, you deal with agents, and players have a little bit more stronger opinion about how their plan should be. Fortunately, I didn't stay long, or, fortunately, unfortunately, I didn't stay in the game long enough to kind of get that experience. But I've heard from other people of mine, some friends, some colleagues about how that kind of goes. Going back to the collegiate level, coaches are extremely invested in the players' health and how fast they're going to get back. And in the high school level, like your brother, like you have the player who's invested in it, and you're right, 100%. You do feel like the bad guy because every time I have to call a parent, it's never like, oh yeah, little Johnny did such and such at the game today. He's doing great. Here's his popsicle. It's usually like, hey, mom, little Johnny slid into first base, and we have a little bit of a problem here. It looks like we dislocated an elbow. You know, here's what we're doing to kind of settle him in. If you guys aren't here, let's kind of get here and see if we need to take him to a hospital. And you kind of get a whole bunch of different responses from parents. But the best way that I can sum it up at the high school level is the kind of the way that lady explained to me in the NICU, and being a NICU parent, is you have like shells of people, and in the center of it, the shell is, or the point of it is the athlete and his parents. And so when you're there, the next people outside that have a vested interest are going to be your coaching staff, your sports medicine staff, and then the community outside. You never look for support kind of inward. You want to look for support in the next rung outward. But the role of an athletic trainer is to get kids to participate in sport safely and to return them to play as safely as possible. And our evaluations on how good of a job we're doing is not the same evaluation as like a coach, right? Theirs is very much win and losses, winning record, things like that. So for me, I try to rationalize that with coaches and with invested people from the community and with the athlete. Like I'm evaluated differently on my protocols. Here's why I want to do these things. And when you break it down that way, you'll still have some parents that disagree with you, and that's totally fine. It's ultimately their kid, and they can kind of do what they want to do with them at the end of the day. All you can do is be a resource of reason. And with the coaching staff, you got to come in and develop that kind of expectation of how you want to run your medical practice while you're there at the setting, and not be intimidated by some hard conversations that you're gonna have with coaching staff and with admin and with the parents of players and the players themselves sometimes. And really, if you have your greatest intention is to keep them safe and they still don't yield the warning, you can, at least I could sleep better at night knowing that than if I gave in to something that I was against, and it ended up having a negative outcome for that athlete.
You brought up something really interesting just now that I want to kind of go back to, and you said that your job is kind of evaluated differently than coaches. And I want to ask, how do you like evaluate yourself? Because that is kind of interesting. I mean, obviously you can't evaluate yourself based on, or maybe you can, based on the amount of injuries, right? Because like, if a kid gets like hit with a fastball in the head and has a concussion, that really doesn't have an impact on something that you had done.
Right.
But how do you, like, at the end of a season or at the end of an academic year, whatever it may be, how do you assess yourself, and how do you think athletic trainers get assessed in general?
Yeah, I think overall the way athletic trainers get assessed is by like how much they do for a team. Um, and that could be a lot of different things depending on what setting you're in, and also like what the community's overall view of your profession is. For me, I track data a lot when it comes to like my sign-in sheets for athletes coming in to get treatment. I write down their name, of course, what body part, what side of the body part is injured, and like what sport they're in. And then at the end of a sports season, like right now, I'm kind of starting winter sports and fall sports have ended. I'm tabulating like, here's how many women's volleyball players came in to see me in this 3 month season. Here's how many football players. Here's how many golfers here, and then here's like, oh, let's look and see what the injuries were. Oh, right ankle sprain was the most common injury in football. And then we look and see how much time they missed. And so I have some objective data or quantifiable data to send back to the admin, the school board, to the coaching staff and say, hey, if you would have had to take these athletes and they would have had to go to a physical therapy clinic, and they would have had to have paid a copay. Like they got all of this with me for free. And this is the value that an athletic trainer brings to your program here. Um, that's where I think I evaluate my value, especially in the school setting that I work in now is generally not I would say wealthy or well-off community in the surrounding area. So if I can save a family, $100 a week by not having to go to see a physical therapist for stuff that I can do within my means and my scope of practice at the school, then I find value in that. And that's kind of how like I know I'm doing a good job. Not necessarily how quickly I can get them back into return to play, but saving money. And for other schools and for other universities maybe, and it's gonna be up to the athletic trainer and whoever their evaluator is, or their boss or supervisor is to create that rubric that they want with them.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it's interesting hearing that because like in the professional and especially like the big league level, like hearing how fans see athletic trainers is like based on the amount of injuries. And it's like that's not fair. Like
Yeah.
you can't and I guess the other one is like a guy has a hamstring injury and he's back a few weeks later and then he, has the hamstring injury again and it's like, okay, it's the athletic trainer's fault. He rushed him back. But we never know like the full story of what happened. So it's kind of
Yeah.
interesting
If
hearing that.
if I could pull back the curtain on that, to give fans of your show kind of like how many people are involved on the day-to-day care of an athlete is quite eye-opening. So, for example, if you take a hypothetical, player that's, top in the MLB's pipeline, has high expectations and he signed for high money. Now he is with you at your level, and you've kept him injury free for the most part. He gets promoted up a level and then promoted up another level, and he breaks down, goes on the injured list for a little while. Every day, the athletic trainer is going to have his rehab program, do the treatment. They're going to have a coaches meeting where we go through our injured players and what they can and can't do that day and activity level. Your strength staff is going to have what their conditioning is going to be, their lifting programs that they're on, and you're going to be involved in conversations with that. You also have their position coaches that are going to ask, can they throw a bullpen right here? Can they throw a flat ground? Can they do shadow work? Can they do dry work? Um, and then you're ultimately going to have the people at the next level who are saying, okay, how far along before we might be able to promote them, or when can we get them back on to the field? It's not how people think in general that it is. If a guy goes down with a pulled hammy, they're not just sitting back in the clubhouse playing PlayStation 5. Their day probably starts a lot earlier than a healthy guy because they're there for pregame treatment. They're going through their rehab treatment, their rehab lift, their rehab conditioning or running program, their hitting program if they need to. And then they're there for the game because it's still their job, even if they're not in the dugout and dressed, like they're still at the facility getting work done, or on the backfields. And then they get post-game treatment from the medical staff as well. And then they go back with the team to whatever facility, or they're if they're on the road, they go back to the hotel, and you basically rinse and repeat. So there's a lot of vested parties and different disciplines that are interested in getting this player back onto the field as safe as possible. And setbacks do happen. I've had a few in my career, in my short stint with the A's that, I think back on from time to time, and I'm like, man, if I could have maybe advocated a little bit more here, or done this a little bit different, or tried this instead of that. It's maddening at times, but yeah, to the fans that watch your show, just know that it's not solely our call on getting a guy out early or late, or missing a diagnosis on a guy. It's very rarely just one person that makes that decision.
Yeah, for sure. And last question, because I've kept you for way too long.
Oh,
And
I'm a
we will
talker.
have
I
we will
love it.
have a round two, Joe. Like we will
Oh
have
yeah.
because there's so much more that I didn't get into. Like I could ask you about like load management and pitch counts and all that stuff. We will get into that on a different day. But
Perfect.
I do want to ask, um, are you able to let's say, someone does not want to be sidelined, someone does not want to tell you about an injury, an athlete. Are you able to tell when something's up? Like, do you have like, because when our parents have like that instinct, usually the mothers have the instinct where it's like, my mom always says that she has eyes in the back of her head or something like that. So she knows what, like, they know us. Do you
Yeah.
have that instinct as an athletic trainer where it's like, okay, this guy's favoring his left leg a little bit more than his right leg? Do you have that instinct, or is it kind of hard to tell sometimes?
Uh, depending on where you're at.
They're
In
good actors sometimes,
Yeah,
huh?
in pro baseball, guys will try and not do it because they don't want to miss time. But it's really easy in pro baseball because if you have a pitcher and all year long he's been holding like low 90s in the fourth inning, and this third inning he's in the high 80s, like
Yeah, can't hide
something's wrong.
that.
Is he overly tired? Does he feel pain? How's he walking? Does he have a blister on his finger? Like all this stuff. At the high school setting, when you go in your first year, you're relying on people screaming in the stands about something, the visuals from coaches. And most times I think, especially in this day and age, kids don't want to hide their injuries. We've kind of progressed as a whole, and like, hey, your brain is important. It's okay to feel emotions. Like, let's take care of our mental health. Let's take care of our bodies. And I've seen that going back to the high school setting. For as rowdy as these high school kids can be sometimes, I don't think I've had a lot of kids try and hide how they're doing from me. I think a lot of it they try to hide from the coaches because they're afraid of that conflict of like, oh, I don't want to disappoint coach, but I know that I need to take care of my body. So they come tell me, and then I have to step in and tell the coach like, hey, number 22 shut down for the day. Um, kind of got some stuff going on in the lower half. I don't really have the stuff here on the sideline to get him back in. We'll talk tomorrow, or we'll talk after the game. And maybe the coach will yell at me or whatever. We have a more heated conversation on the sideline when emotions are high. And then, behind closed doors, we have a more, you know, focused conversation on kind of what our expectations are going to be for that. So yes and no. Going into a new school, it's a little tough, but most athletes will give you some signs here and there about what they're trying to hide from you.
Yeah, no, exactly. If you're a freshman baseball player, sometimes the radar guns are not like always great, and sometimes they're not even brought out I could think one time where I remember a radar gun in high school. So
Mhm.
like one time where I
And
remember
now you
one.
have every dad that thinks their kid's the next
Oh
Garrett
yeah.
Cole is going to have a pocket coach radar with them, and I've seen that. I've covered per diem at baseball tournaments, and I mean, they're the stereotypical dad standing behind the backstop with their tracking. So I
You just
think
keep adding topics for the next
that's
podcast, Joe.
right.
Like
I think
we are
it's
just
just paralysis through over analysis. I think you kind of get stuck in the weeds with one number on a gun and thinking that's going to predict your whole entire future for your little kid. And that's a conversation that we could have for hours. But um, yeah, I'd love to be back on for a round two with you and delve more into any other topics you have.
yeah.
Thank you so much for giving me the time and the platform, Stephen. I hope your viewers enjoy it.
Yeah, it was a total blast. I know I learned a lot. And funny thing, real quick, I I hid an injury from my brother actually. When I was in high school, he was like still kind of working for the school and I was at the school, and I would in batting practice during practice, we were doing live at bats and I had gotten hit in the funny bone by a pitch, and my whole arm went numb, just completely numb. And like when you hit your funny bone, usually your arm does go numb, but it's like temporary, right? This one was
Right.
not temporary. Like the next day, it still felt numb. And I was like, what's going on? And I tried throwing, and then he eventually found out, obviously, but he was very upset by that. But I had to tell you about that. But no, Joe, I really appreciate you coming on. This was a total blast, and we will definitely have you on again. This was so much fun. There's so many more topics that we could get to. It's a wide ranging discussion about what it is to be an athletic trainer. I'm glad that you could help us with just a little bit of that. Even though it was a little bit, it was still a lot. So I think a lot of people learned
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. I appreciate you taking the time. I'm glad I reached out to you on LinkedIn. And for anybody that might be curious and wanted to hear me talk more, I am on a couple of other podcasts. If you just type my name in on Spotify, they should come up if I haven't talked your ear off and bored you guys out yet. If you guys want to get a hold of me, throw my name in on LinkedIn, you'll be able to find me. And then on Instagram, if you just type in Joe the ATC, you'll find me there. Not that I'm necessarily a great follow, but if you want to see some photos of my daughter that I'm posting quite regularly, feel free to reach out to me there. And I just thank you guys for the support and everything. Hopefully, I can find another way to entertain you guys. And yeah, thanks for having me on, Steven.
Absolutely. And everybody could go ahead and follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at RizzoCast, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. Go like and subscribe. That's what the kids say, I guess. Go like and subscribe. Check it out. And we will see you next time.